Some of the most important words you'll ever speak are the ones you've been afraid to say, not because they're dramatic, but because they're honest. As Mercury enters Leo, the energy begins shifting from quiet reflection toward authentic expression. After weeks of strengthening your inner foundation, this transit asks a simple but powerful question. What becomes possible when you stop editing yourself to fit everyone else's expectations? In today's reflection, we'll explore why finding your voice has less to do with confidence than you might think, how self-trust naturally transforms the way you communicate, and a simple psychological exercise that will help you express yourself with greater clarity, warmth, and authenticity over the coming days. Sometimes your greatest breakthrough isn't discovering something new to say. It's finally trusting yourself enough to say what has always been true. Mercury is the planet most closely associated with the mind. It influences the way we think, learn, interpret experiences, and communicate with the world around us. As Mercury moves into Leo, something subtle begins to shift. Our thoughts become more closely connected to our identity. Instead of simply asking, "What should I say?" we begin asking, "Does what I'm say reflect who I truly am?" That's an important distinction. Many of us spend years learning how to communicate in ways that keep us accepted. We become skilled at reading the room, avoiding conflict, saying what feels safest, agreeing when we aren't entirely convinced, remaining silent when our heart quietly wishes we would speak. These habits often develop for good reasons. At some point, they protected us. Perhaps speaking honestly wasn't welcomed. Perhaps being different attracted criticism. Perhaps expressing emotion felt uncomfortable in the environment we grew up in. So the mind adapted. It learned that safety sometimes meant becoming smaller. Over time, those protective habits can become so familiar that we mistake them for our personality. We begin believing we're naturally quiet, naturally hesitant, naturally uncertain. When in reality, we've simply become accustomed to filtering ourselves before anyone else has the chance to respond. Mercury entering Leo gently interrupts that pattern. Leo isn't concerned with performing for approval. At its healthiest, Leo expresses from the heart. There's a quiet confidence that comes from speaking honestly, not because everyone will agree, but because your words are no longer competing with your own inner truth. That kind of confidence isn't loud. It doesn't need to dominate conversations or prove its worth. It simply rests in authenticity. Psychologically, something interesting happens when our thoughts and our actions become aligned. The mind becomes quieter. There's less energy spent rehearsing conversations that never happen. Less overthinking about whether you said the perfect thing. Less exhaustion from trying to become whoever each situation expects you to be. Instead, communication becomes more natural. You listen more openly because you're no longer busy protecting an image. You speak more clearly because you're no longer editing every sentence before it leaves your mouth. This transit reminds us that finding your voice isn't about becoming someone different. It's about removing the layers that have convinced you your natural voice wasn't enough. Perhaps your greatest strength has never been hiding behind carefully chosen words. Perhaps it's allowing your genuine thoughts, kindness, curiosity, and wisdom to be heard exactly as they are. Because the people who are meant to connect with you were never waiting for perfection. They were waiting for authenticity. The quiet fear of what might happen after they speak is not a lack of intelligence, but a lack of confidence. It is often the fear of what might happen after they speak. What if I'm misunderstood? What if they don't agree? What if I disappoint someone? What if they see a version of me they've never seen before? These questions usually appear so quickly that we don't even notice them. We simply stay quiet, or we soften our opinion, or we laugh something off before anyone can take it seriously. Over time, these small moments accumulate, not because we're dishonest, because we're protecting ourselves. Our nervous system learns that acceptance feels safer than authenticity. It begins choosing belonging over truth, even when that choice slowly distances us from who we really are. Mercury entering Leo invites us to gently examine that habit, not with judgment, with curiosity. Ask yourself this. When was the last time you changed your words to avoid making someone uncomfortable? When was the last time you held back an idea because you assumed it wasn't valuable enough? Or perhaps you stayed silent because you believed someone else's voice mattered more than your own. These moments seem insignificant, yet they quietly shape the relationship we have with ourselves. Every time we dismiss our own perspective, we send our mind a subtle message. My truth isn't important. The mind listens. Eventually, it stops bringing those thoughts forward altogether. This is why authentic expression isn't simply a communication skill. It's an act of self-respect. It tells your nervous system that your thoughts deserve space. Your feelings deserve acknowledgement. Your perspective deserves to exist, even if it isn't universally understood. That doesn't mean speaking every thought that enters your mind. Wisdom still matters. Kindness still matters. Listening still matters. Authenticity isn't about becoming louder. It's about becoming more aligned. There's a remarkable difference between speaking to impress people and speaking to connect with them. One seeks approval. The other offers presence. When your words come from a place of honesty, they carry a different kind of energy. People may not always agree with you, but they'll often feel that you're genuine. And genuine people create genuine relationships. Perhaps Mercury's greatest lesson isn't teaching us how to communicate more. Perhaps it's reminding us that the strongest voice is rarely the loudest one. It's the one that no longer feels the need to hide. Every time you choose honesty with kindness, every time you express yourself without apologizing for who you are, you're strengthening something far more valuable than confidence. You're strengthening trust in yourself. And once self-trust begins to grow, your voice naturally follows. Confidence is often misunderstood. Many people believe it appears first and action follows. They tell themselves, when I feel more confident, I'll speak up. When I'm more certain, I'll share my ideas. When I stop doubting myself, I'll finally become who I want to be. But our minds rarely work that way. Confidence isn't something we discover. It's something we build. Think about learning any new skill. You don't become confident before your first attempt. You become confident because you've practiced enough times to realize that even mistakes won't define you. The same is true when expressing yourself. The first honest conversation might feel uncomfortable. The second feels slightly easier. By the 10th, your nervous system begins recognizing that authenticity isn't nearly as dangerous as it once believed. This is how self-trust is formed, not through endless thinking, through repeated experiences that quietly rewrite your expectations. Mercury entering Leo supports exactly this kind of growth. It encourages us to stop waiting for permission to be ourselves. Instead, it asks us to begin acting in small ways that reflect the person we're becoming. That could mean sharing an idea during a meeting instead of remaining silent, expressing appreciation instead of assuming people already know how you feel, setting a gentle boundary without apologizing for having one, saying, I don't know when you genuinely don't have the answer, or saying, this matters to me without feeling the need to justify why. These aren't dramatic acts. They're honest ones. And honesty has a remarkable effect on the nervous system. Every authentic action reduces the gap between who you are inside and who you present to the world. That gap is often where anxiety grows. The more energy we spend maintaining different versions of ourselves for different people, the more mentally exhausting life becomes. But when your inner world and outer expression begin working together, something unexpected happens. Your thoughts become clearer. Your decisions become simpler. Your relationships become more genuine. Not because everyone suddenly agrees with you, because you're no longer carrying the weight of pretending. Real confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the quiet understanding that your worth doesn't disappear simply because someone disagrees with you. You remain enough. You remain whole. You remain worthy of respect, including your own. Perhaps that's the deeper invitation of this transit. To stop asking, will people approve of what I have to say? And begin asking, will I be proud that I spoke honestly, kindly, and truthfully? That question has the power to change every conversation you have, beginning with the one you have with yourself. One of the most beautiful qualities of authentic communication is that it doesn't ask you to become more impressive. It asks you to become more present. When we feel the need to impress others, our attention leaves the conversation. Part of our mind begins monitoring how we're being perceived. Did I say the right thing? Did that sound intelligent? Do they agree with me? Should I explain myself more? Instead of truly connecting, we become occupied with managing an image. That constant self-monitoring is mentally exhausting. It also makes genuine connection much more difficult. Mercury entering Leo gently reminds us that people rarely remember perfectly crafted words. They remember how someone made them feel. Think about the conversations that have stayed with you throughout your life. Perhaps someone offered encouragement exactly when you needed it. Perhaps a friend listened without trying to fix you. Perhaps someone believed in you before you believed in yourself. Those moments weren't powerful because the words were flawless. They were powerful because they were sincere. Presence carries a kind of confidence that performance never can. When you're fully present, you stop searching for the perfect sentence. You become curious. You listen more carefully. You respond instead of rehearsing. You allow silence to exist without rushing to fill every moment. Ironically, this often makes your communication stronger, because people don't connect through perfection. They connect through authenticity. This is especially important in a world that encourages constant comparison. Every day we're surrounded by carefully edited versions of other people's lives. It's easy to begin believing that our own voice needs to sound smarter, more entertaining, or more accomplished before it deserves to be heard. But your greatest strength has never been sounding like someone else. It's sounding like yourself, your experiences, your perspective, your values. No one else can offer those in quite the same way. That's why authenticity naturally creates confidence. You're no longer trying to maintain a version of yourself that requires constant effort. You simply show up as you are, and there's an incredible sense of freedom in that. The energy that was once spent pretending becomes available for creating, connecting, and growing. As Mercury settles into Leo over the coming days, notice how often you feel tempted to perform instead of simply being present. Each time you catch yourself doing it, gently return your attention to the conversation itself. Listen with your whole attention. Speak with honesty. Allow your words to reflect your heart rather than your fear. Because when your communication becomes an expression of who you truly are, every conversation becomes an opportunity to strengthen the relationship that matters most. The one you have with yourself. For the next few days, I'd like to invite you to try a simple practice. Not to become a better speaker, but to become a more honest listener to yourself. Call this exercise one honest conversation. Choose one interaction before Mercury leaves this early phase in Leo. It doesn't need to be life-changing. It doesn't need to resolve years of conflict. It simply needs to be real. Perhaps it's thanking someone you've appreciated for a long time but never told. Perhaps it's expressing a boundary you've quietly ignored. Perhaps it's sharing an idea you've kept to yourself because you assumed it wasn't important. Or maybe it's simply admitting that you're struggling instead of pretending everything is fine. Before the conversation begins, pause for a moment. Take one slow breath. Then ask yourself one question. Am I about to speak from fear or from truth? Don't worry about sounding perfect. Don't search for the perfect sentence. Focus on being genuine. Notice what happens inside your body as you speak. Does your breathing become calmer once you've stopped hiding? Do your shoulders soften? Does the conversation feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the effort of pretending? These are important observations, because confidence isn't measured by how fearless you feel. It's measured by how willing you are to remain authentic, even when vulnerability is present. After the conversation, spend a few minutes reflecting. Ask yourself, how did it feel to express myself honestly? Then ask, what did I learn about myself? You may discover something surprising. The fear you carried beforehand was often much larger than the reality itself. Even if the conversation doesn't unfold exactly as you hoped, you've still accomplished something meaningful. You've given yourself evidence. Evidence that your voice deserves space. Evidence that authenticity becomes easier with practice. Evidence that courage isn't a personality trait reserved for a few people. It's a habit. Every time you choose honesty with kindness, you strengthen that habit. Every time you express yourself respectfully instead of remaining silent out of fear, your nervous system learns something new. It learns that your truth doesn't create danger. It creates alignment. And over time, those small moments begin changing the way you experience every relationship, including the one you have with yourself. That's how authentic confidence grows, not through one extraordinary conversation, but through many ordinary conversations where you decide that your genuine voice is worthy of being heard. As Mercury continues its journey through Leo, remember that your voice is more than a way of communicating. It's a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. When you trust yourself, your words naturally become calmer. When you respect yourself, your boundaries become clearer. When you accept yourself, your conversations become more genuine. These changes don't happen because you've memorized the right techniques. They happen because something inside you has shifted. You no longer need every person to understand you before you feel secure. You no longer need constant reassurance that your perspective has value. You begin carrying that validation within yourself. And that's where authentic confidence truly begins. There will still be moments when you hesitate. Moments when doubt quietly returns. Moments when your old habits invite you to stay silent or make yourself smaller. That's completely human. Growth doesn't erase uncertainty. It changes the way you respond to it. Instead of allowing fear to make the decision, you acknowledge it, thank it for trying to protect you, and then let your values guide the next step. Little by little, your voice becomes less influenced by fear and more influenced by purpose. You stop asking, "How can I avoid being judged?" and begin asking, "How can I contribute something meaningful?" That single shift transforms communication. Your attention moves away from protecting your image and towards serving the conversation. You become a better listener because you're no longer preparing your next response while someone else is speaking. You become more compassionate because you're no longer carrying the pressure of appearing perfect. You become more courageous because you've learned that authenticity is more fulfilling than approval. Perhaps that's Mercury's greatest lesson in Leo. Your voice was never meant to compete with anyone else's. It was meant to reveal something only you can offer: your experiences, your perspective, your kindness, your creativity, your quiet wisdom. The world doesn't benefit when those qualities remain hidden. It benefits when they're shared with honesty and humility. As you move through the coming days, let every conversation become an opportunity to practice alignment. Not perfect communication, aligned communication, words that match your values, actions that support your words, and a life that gradually reflects both. Because when your thoughts, your voice, and your actions begin moving in the same direction, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to become someone worthy of being heard. You realize you already are. And from that realization, every conversation becomes a chance to strengthen not only your relationships with others, but also the quiet confidence growing within yourself. As we bring today's reflection to a close, remember that Mercury's journey through Leo isn't asking you to become someone more impressive. It's inviting you to become someone more authentic. The world doesn't need another perfect voice. It needs more honest ones. Your thoughts matter. Your perspective matters. Your kindness matters. Not because they're louder than everyone else's, but because they're uniquely yours. Over the coming days, pay attention to the small moments that invite you to speak from your heart. A sincere compliment, a thoughtful question, a boundary expressed with respect, a conversation you've been postponing because you weren't sure you had the right words. You may discover that courage doesn't arrive before those moments. It grows because of them. Each honest conversation becomes another reminder that your voice is not something you have to earn. It's something you learn to trust. As you continue practicing the exercise from today's reflection, notice how your inner dialogue begins to change as well. The way we speak to ourselves often becomes the foundation for the way we speak to others. When your inner voice becomes more compassionate, your outer voice naturally becomes more confident. When your inner world becomes more peaceful, your communication carries that same calm presence. That's the quiet transformation Mercury in Leo offers. Not louder communication, clearer communication, not performing, connecting, not seeking approval, offering authenticity. If today's reflection helped you reconnect with your own voice, I'd love for you to continue this journey with us here at Daily Inner Alignment. Every transit offers another opportunity to better understand yourself, strengthen your inner world, and move through life's changing seasons with greater awareness. Our next reflection explores one of the most expansive transits of the season, Venus entering Gemini, where we'll discover how curiosity, meaningful conversations, and openness to new perspectives can breathe fresh life into our relationships, creativity, and everyday experiences. Until then, trust your voice. Trust your growth. And remember that every time you choose honesty over fear, presence over performance, and connection over perfection, you're becoming more fully yourself. Take care, and I'll see you in the next Daily Inner Alignment.